Now that we've created our MySQL database on our host and we have the proper credentials in our database connection script, we can now create the necessary database tables for our social software system. We're going to use PHP Script to create and also structure the fields inside of the new database tables. And just keep in mind that at any point, if you so choose to create your tables through phpMyAdmin instead of direct scripting, you can do that. Or if you want to jump into phpMyAdmin after we run this script to verify that all the tables are created in the database, that's no problem. Okay, so our new script that we're going to use to create the database tables is going to connect to the database through our database connection script that we created in the last video. So we're going to remove the else condition off of the if condition because we don't need to echo out successful database connection happy coding. We know that we're connected successfully now with the proper credentials in our MySQL connect function. Okay, so just remove that else condition because it's not needed. Throughout production, you should leave your file just like this. Now go to File, New, and we're going to create a new PHP script that's going to be for creating our database tables, and this is going to be a temporary file that lives on your server only as long as you need it to run it. Once you run the file, after you get your database tables created, you delete it from your server online. Now press Ctrl S to save this file into your root directory. So here's my web intersect website folder on my local machine here, and in my root folder I'm going to save this file as MakeMyTables, and it'll have a PHP extension save. So we have MakeMyTables.php. So let's open up a PHP scripting block. Now the first thing we have to do inside of this temporary MakeMyTables script is include the database connection script. That way this script connects to the database successfully and then can create the tables. So if you go to File, Open, you can see your folder structure, and inside of your root directory you have PHP includes, and that's where your db_connects lives. So what we're going to do is type in include once, which is a PHP function, open close parentheses, and put your semicolon. Then in between the parentheses you're going to put the location and the name of the file that you want to include once. Our location is PHP includes folder, and the file is db_connects.php. So now this script is successfully connected to the database. And online on your live web server where your website is actually running online, you want to really make sure that your directory, your folder structure, is exactly the same as it is on your local side. And what I mean is, don't forget to FTP all these files to the web and all these folders, okay? They have to be on the web for you to connect to them correctly. So on your live web server, you have to have PHP includes folder, and inside of it has to be your dbconnects.php script. Now we're going to create the SQL syntax for the first table. So you can go down a couple of lines and type in $table users. And that's going to be equal to everything that we put within these double quotes, and then put a semicolon. Now the syntax to create a MySQL table is simply create table, and then you put the name of the table. We're going to name our first table users, and then you simply open and close parentheses, and then in between your parentheses you want to put some new lines there. Just bring that down, and then indent this to right about there. So you have something that looks about like that. And then indent line 5 also to right about there. Now right here on line 5 is where we're going to put all of the fields inside of the users table. So this syntax will create a table users, and then it'll populate that table with all of the fields that you specify here. And each line can be comma separated. So you can put many different fields. Okay, my first field is going to be named ID. And it's going to be a data type of int or integer, and it's going to have a value of 11. That way it can be up to, I think, a number up in the billions. We'll say not null, which means upon placing data into that field, it cannot be empty when that row is filled. And it's going to be auto increment. That means this field auto increments, so it starts at 0, and then as each row is placed in, it increments that number automatically. So when my first user joins, he'll have an ID of 1. My second user joins, he'll automatically get an ID of 2, and so on and so forth. Now as you populate each field within this table, you put a comma trailing each directive, except for the last one. Okay? So now let's make our next line, and this field is going to be named username. And this is where your member's username will be stored. It's a varchar field type, and we're giving it a value of 16. That way it can't have more than 16 characters in it. So if somebody tries to insert a name with 24 characters, the database just won't accept it. This field won't accept 24 characters. It'll cut it off at 16. And this one is not null also. That means the field cannot be empty when the row is populated. We also want to store the member's email address, and that is also varchar data type with a max of 255. And actually the characters max is 255 for varchar fields, I believe. So if you want to just max it out and give it or you can make this 100 if you want, and it'll cut off at 100. But I'm just going to make it 255. In the next line, we have to store the user's password. And that's also going to be varchar data type, not null. The next field is the user's gender. And this is going to be enumerated data type. And we're going to have two options that it could be, either M or F. And this is also not null because when the person joins the site, we're going to make them specify whether they're a male or female to us. Now this next field, we're going to store the user's website, their web address for their website. And this can be varchar data type, 255. And this one we're going to set to null. That means it can be empty because not all of your members may have a website yet or whatever, and they might like to leave that empty. And that's something that you wouldn't take from them in your initial registration form. You would take that from them after. This next field, we're going to store their country. Okay, let's define the rest of the fields here. The next one is going to be user level, and that's going to be enumerated type as well. But you'll have options of A, B, C, or D. And this will allow you to make some users have more privileges than others. And we set it to not null and have a default value of A. When the user joins, this field will just get a default value of A. And then later on, inside of your admin panel, or whatever kind of options settings you set up for admin, whoever can promote your users, that's the person that would change this user level from A to B, C, or D to promote that user. But when everybody joins, they're just a normal member with user level of A. Avatar is for their picture, and this is just a means of cache busting their profile picture. So whenever they change their main profile picture, you're going to change the file name within this avatar field. The next field is IP. We're going to store the user's IP address directly when they sign up, and you can also update this field at any time. Sign up date, that's going to have a date time data type. It's a special string that holds date and time. So when they sign up, we'll know the exact time and date that they signed up. Now last login is to record when they sign up. We'll populate that with the sign up date. But then the next time they log in, we're going to update that field. So this way our system knows the user's sign up date and the date they last logged into the system. This field is notes check. And this one we're going to use, this also has a date time data type, and this one we're going to use to update the date and time every time they check their notifications. And this way what you can do is give them a blinking icon if you know that there are notifications in there that they haven't checked yet. And you can use this date field for that purpose. So if the user comes to your site, on the header you might want to put a blinking something, or maybe something to attract their attention to let them know that they have new notifications. And the last field is activated, and that's an enumerated data type and has values of either 0 or 1, not null. So when they join, it has a default value of 0. And this is in place so that you can send an email to each person that joins your site when they join, and they have to actually verify that email address by checking the email contents and clicking the link inside of it that's going to update your system. And your system will be updated from 0 to 1 for that member, and that way your system knows that that member's email address is verified and they actually get email messages to that address. That way they're not lying about their address basically. So that's it for the fields. Now we're going to add two more directives for the table. We're going to add a primary key for the ID field. So this field up here, ID, not only will it auto increment, it will also be the primary key, which will also give it a unique index. So no two IDs could be exactly the same. And then finally, the last line, notice this one does not have a comma. All the other lines have commas at the end of them. This one does not, because it is the last directive. And what this line does is sets the unique keys on the table to username and email. So basically with these two lines, you're setting primary key to ID, which makes that have a unique index, and you're just setting unique indexes for your username and email. So no two users can have the same ID or username or email within your system. People could have the same country, they can have the same password even, but they cannot have the same email, username, or ID. Okay, so this completes the SQL syntax for creating a MySQL database table. Now, to actually execute that as a query against the database, you're going to type in this line, variable called query, and that's equal to MySQL I query. And for the MySQL I query function, you need your database connection link here, and then your SQL syntax goes after that. Normally, if you're used to regular MySQL query, it would look just like this. If you're using MySQL query function, you only feed this parameter, which is your SQL syntax. But if you're using the MySQL I query function, you have to set the link first for your database connection, and then your SQL syntax goes afterwards. Now, after that line, the database, if everything is correct, and you're connected and all your SQL syntax is correct, you'll have a database table called users created into your database. Now, to verify that, you run this if condition, which says if the query is explicitly equal to true, which means that if everything worked out with this MySQL I query and there were no hangups, it's going to echo out user table created OK and a smiley face. Else, if there was any problems and this doesn't return true, it's going to echo out user table not created, and it'll give you a sad face. So when you run this script, you better look for smiley faces. If you see any sad faces, you got a problem, buddy. Okay, one more thing you can do in your SQL syntax, in your create table syntax, is to put in if not exists. After the word table, you put if not exists users. That way, if the table users already exists within that database, this script, it won't replace that table or cause any conflicts. So that's just an optional thing you can do. Now that you understand the entire script so far, I'm going to put a line here and just paste in the rest of the table creation queries. So let's start at the top here. You have your table users that we just went through in depth, and the next one is going to be user options, and you can see it gets different fields. And inside of user options, I added a question and answer field, and this can give you enhanced security if you need an extra layer of security for any kind of delete actions or any kind of secure functionality on your site. When the user signs up, you can have them choose a question from a list and then supply the answer for it, and you store both of those things, the question they chose and the answer. And then when you have to do anything really secure on the site, like change password or change email or possibly delete an article or something like that. Now, the next table that's going to be created is the friends table, and you just have the user 1, who is the person requesting friendship, and user 2, who is the person who accepts that friendship. And when they accept, then you update the date made field to reflect the date and time of when the friendship was accepted, and you change the accepted field, which is enumerated between the values of 0 and 1, and the default is 0. That means the friendship is not accepted until user 2 actually confirms it. When the user 2 presses confirm on the friendship, then that is when your system updates accepted field to 1, making that friendship a real union. And this accepted field is here so that way you can use this table more efficiently. That way you can have your friend requests be directly in the table. Your actual friend requests are the friendships, and they're not really made into a friendship until this accepted turns to 1. And if user 2 denies the friendship or ignores it, then you just delete that row from the database completely. Okay, the next table is blocked users, and that's simple. You're going to have the blockee or the blocker's name here. Whoever wants to do the blocking, you put that username there, and the person being blocked is the blockee. You put their name there, and then the block date. The next table is going to be status, and this is your conversation table. This is where you hold all of your conversations, and I'll discuss all of the fields within this table a lot more in depth when we go to scripting that application. The next table is photos, and this is how you're going to store string data. for all of the photos on your site, and you connect those photos to an actual user through this field called user, and that's where you put the username that owns the photo. And if they have individual galleries, you put the gallery name there that that photo belongs in. And I put a description field. We have upload date and file name. Okay, the last table is notifications, and this is for your notification software on your site. What happens is anytime anybody does anything on the site that you want to maybe inform somebody else about, that might be their friend or whatever, you slap it into the notifications table for that friend that you want to inform. And you can see each of these uses date, time, enumerated, varchar, and int, all of these tables. And so we explained how all of those work when we set up this syntax up here. So you know how enum, date, time, and varchar and all of that work. And the rest of these tables are all set up with similar type fields. And for each table syntax, you just run a new little query that will create that table, and then you simply check it real quick. So remember, you want to get nothing but smiley faces when we go to run this file. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to FTP it to my root directory, my public HTML folder. Then I'm going to simply navigate to it directly using my browser to execute it, make it run. Okay, here I am live online at webintersect.com, and I'm going to put a / and make my tables.php. Tables.php. And then I'm going to press enter. Alright, I got nothing but smiley faces, baby. And that's what you want. If you have any sad faces, then you had some kind of problem occur. Or if you have any other kind of output, some kind of problem occurred. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables. Notifications, photos, status, blocks users, friends, user options, and the main user table. All created OK. Now to verify that, you can simply go to your hosting account control panel, and it's usually right here near where the MySQL databases little icon is. You'll see PHP MyAdmin. Click that. And on the left, you'll see your social database. You click that. Oh, by the way, if you have to log into PHP MyAdmin, you simply put your MySQL user name and your password. And you log in to get to where I am now. Alright, so you can see we have all of our tables made. Blocked users, friends, notifications, photos, status, user options, and the main user table is right there at the bottom. So if I click users, I can see the structure of that database table. And you can see we cannot browse it because there's no rows in it yet. It's empty until we get our first member. So I just wanted to take you into PHP MyAdmin so you can visually inspect all of your tables and their structure. Okay, so that completes an in-depth explanation of using PHP to script table creation and establishing data storage tables for your software systems. With the tables made, we can now start bringing the website to life. I will see interested parties in Part 4.